If you're of a certain vintage and you're into performance cars, 3 letters are legendary: WRX. And that's exactly what this is, the new Subaru WRX. And today we're going to try to answer the question of whether this vehicle lives up to those 3 legendary letters. Some would say the specification grade we're testing today, which is 1 step above base with a manual transmission, is the one to have. I tend to agree. We're going to look into that today as well. But first up, let's take a look at the styling. One of the most interesting things for me when a manufacturer releases a car in modern times is all of the commentary that comes out online once those pictures are out. Back in the old days, you went to a motor show, you looked at it in the flesh, and then you probably spoke to your mate or your parents about it and said, I like it or I don't like it. Now, there's all this commentary online. Largely, it has to be said, from people who are probably never going to buy one anyway, but some of that commentary is a little bit inconsequential. Scoop could be bigger, the wheels could be bigger, stuff like that. However, the most interesting thing about the styling for me when I first saw photos of the Rex was this stuff, this black plastic cladding. Now, we sort of joke that manufacturers do that when they're taking a vehicle and trying to make it look like an SUV and make it look tougher. I wasn't convinced in photos, but having looked at it in the flesh now and spent some time with it, I actually quite like it. I think it works quite well. Beyond that, I've seen photos of one in the States where they've colour-coded all of that. That looked really good as well. So once again, the aftermarket steps in, comes up with an idea. Maybe Subaru will start doing that as well across the board. However, I think it works quite well. And everywhere else, I think this looks like a WRX. The headlights, the taillights, the lines across the boot. I don't think the bonnet scoop needs to be any bigger. It does the job it needs to do, and it doesn't scream, look at me, I've got a massive bonnet scoop. I've got no problem with that. I think the wheel and tyre package works really well also. Let us know what you think though. What do you think of that plastic cladding? Let us know in the comments section below. On test, we have the RS Sedan with the manual transmission, which has a starting price of $50,490 before on-road costs. The range starts with the eponymous WRX Sedan, which starts from $44,990 before on-road costs. Add an automatic to the RS we're testing and the starting price is $54,490 before on-road costs. Top of the WRX range is the TS sports wagon with an automatic, which starts from $57,990 before on-road costs. All models are powered by a new 2.4-litre turbocharged 4-cylinder boxer engine, which generates 202 kilowatts and 350 newton metres, with the choice of either a 6-speed manual or CVT automatic with 8 simulated ratios. Drivers sent to all 4 wheels, with manual models getting a 50-50 front-to-rear torque split and centre limited slip differential, while automatics get a 55-45 split with variable torque distribution on the fly. Interestingly, manual models don't get autonomous emergency braking, but automatic variants do get a full suite of safety technology. Standard features across the range include 18-inch alloy wheels, an 11.6-inch touchscreen, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, a 4.2-inch instrument display, dual-zone climate control, cloth seats and LED headlights. Move up to the RS we're testing here and you get an electric sunroof, front and side cameras, electric front seats with heating, heated rear outboard seats, satellite navigation and either suede or leather accented upholstery. The boot delivers an impressive carrying capacity with 411 litres on offer, but the back seats fold down to open that space out for larger or longer items to be transported easily. I'd argue that any WRX needs to have a driver-focused, sporty cabin. And as we say time and time again, there's a risk with that, because when a manufacturer does that, it can often come across as being over the top, being a bit kitsch, maybe a bit tasteless. However, what Subaru's done here with the new WRX, I think, is bang on. It's got really high quality seats that are comfortable and they look the part. And while the appearance isn't really the main aim of the game when you're sitting in a car for hours driving, they do look good, but they're also comfortable. I think the visibility, the general driving position, the layout of all the controls are fantastic. I'm loving the fact that this is a manual, so the relationship of shifter to steering wheel and things like that is important when you're in a manual car. Works really well in the WRX. In terms of infotainment, you've got an 11.6-inch screen, cleverly, I think, orientated in a portrait way, which works well because you're used to looking at your mobile phone like that, and then you translate that to the screen. All of the main controls are really easy to understand and get your head around, whether it's the touch screen or the steering wheel. You do get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but it's not wireless, so you need to plug it in. But all in all, this is a high quality cabin, and I think most importantly, despite the fact that it looks good, it's also a comfortable one. You're probably not buying a WRX because you're expecting a limousine experience in the back seat, and yet there's probably a little bit more room here than I would have suspected to start with. That's my driving position there. I've got enough room for my feet, the knee room's pretty good, and the shoulder room's all right as well. You get USB ports, and I think what's a really nice bonus in this spec is heated seats on the outboard positions back here. So on a chilly morning like it is today, if you're in the back seat on a long road trip, you're gonna like the fact that those seats are heated. In terms of the negatives back here, there's only two really. One is the fact that the base of the seat is quite flat. It's not sculpted in as much, so you don't sit into it, you tend to sit on it. It's not a deal breaker, but it's a factor to take into account. And then the other one is the headroom. Because of the style of the WRX, it's got quite a sloping rear section of the roof. And if you're my height, it's not too bad. You know, my head's not hitting the roof and I'm reasonably comfortable. But if you're taller than, say, 6'1", I think you're going to start to get a little bit uncomfortable. You might be leaning forward when you sit in the seat. Aside from that though, pretty practical, and there's enough room. One of the things that we always historically liked about the WRX was the connected feeling that you had when you were driving one. It's difficult to describe really, but you felt like you were plugged into the vehicle, like you were almost part of it. And I reckon this new one still gives you that kind of feedback. There's a real solidity to the steering, to the gear shift, to the clutch pedal, and especially with this one being a manual, you really do feel like you're part of the car and you're an integral part of the driving experience. It doesn't feel remote and like you're removed from it. Unfortunately for most WRXs, they're going to spend their time doing exactly what we're doing now, which is just driving around suburbia and driving around the city. And the reason I say that's unfortunate is because you find out the most about a WRX when you get it off a road like this. So what we're going to do in a minute is take it to a twisty piece of road, a real tight, twisty piece of road, and see if it still behaves the way we would expect a WRX to, and the way a WRX always did traditionally. But here in suburbia, where most of you are going to start your day, when you commute to work and driving around town doing the regular stuff, despite how performance-oriented this car is, it's extremely well behaved. It's comfortable, rides beautifully, it's a really enjoyable car to drive, and even though it's difficult to deliver on 30 years of heritage and just keep delivering something that makes people remember the original fondly but also understand that the vehicle's moved forward, which it has to do, I really do think Subaru's done a good job with this new WRX. On this twisty road, it really does come into its own. The balance, the all-wheel drive, the grip that provides, the steering and the brakes, and the way that you can slow down into a corner, get down a gear or two, and then get back on the accelerator pedal and fire out of the corner. It really is an enjoyable car to drive, and it's one of those vehicles, and there's not a lot of vehicles like this, but the new WRX is one of those vehicles that you can use as a practical daily driver to drive around town, take the kids to school, just use it the way most families do. But then you can also, outside of that, on the weekend, find your favourite piece of twisty road and really hook in and have a whole lot of fun as well. Overall, I really think this WRX is a strong execution, 30 years after the original, of exactly what buyers would expect of this car and what it's supposed to be. It's hard to have a vehicle in 2022 as hard-edged as the original WRX was, because buyers expect more refinement, more luxury, more comfort. However, I think Subaru's done a really good job of balancing performance and usability. And even if you're probably past the age group where the WRX is supposed to appeal to you, this is still a very, very good performance sedan. Well, I have to say, after spending some time with the new WRX, I'm a fan of this new car. I reckon it looks like a WRX. I reckon it drives like a WRX, and when you sit inside it, I reckon it feels like a WRX. Some of the criticism online before people have driven the car talks about the fact it doesn't have that boxer engine rumble that it used to have, but I think it's pretty easy to gloss over the fact that when the WRX first came out 30 years ago, believe it or not, the standard car really didn't have that rumble to start with. It was the aftermarket with exhaust systems that took care of that. So it's a little bit harsh to say that a stock standard new WRX doesn't sound like a WRX, because you can take care of that if you want to. With the manual transmission specifically, I really do think this feels like a WRX to drive. Don't forget to let us know what you think in the comments section below. We always love reading your opinions on any new car, so make sure you get in there and make a comment. If you've enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit like, click on subscribe so you stay up to date with all of our latest video content. And as always, the full review of the new WRX is over at Drive.com.au.